and welcome, and thank you for coming. Let us pray. Please take the soul of Heidi into the sweetest corner of your mind, the most tender place in your heart, that she and we might be comforted. For she is with you and shall remain so forever. She remains within us, for we are all in you together. The cord that binds us one to another cannot be cut. For you, dear Lord, have brought us together, and we remain in eternal connection. There is no greater power than you. This I ask my heart to register. I surrender to you my grief. I surrender to you my pain. Please, dear Lord, take care of Heidi. And please, dear Lord, take care of us all. This morning's scripture reading is taken from the book of Ephesians, chapter 4, verses 6 through 7. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Jesus Christ. We have gathered in this sanctuary to honor and celebrate the life of Heidi. Each of us here today is in a transitional phase. We are trying to transition between the life with Heidi's physical presence and the life where she will live forever in our memories. This transition begins with a shock as news reaches us. Then anxiety, a sense of loss and uncertainty quickly follows. Our initial response is to try by ourselves to control our emotions and our anxieties. What we don't cognitively realize is that anxiety is a trap made up of fear and sadness and shame. And this anxiety, if left unchecked, becomes a vicious cycle where the more anxiety/fear we feel, the more feeble attempts we make to heal and control our minds and our spirits. Allowed to persist, vicious cycles can have a negative effect on us physically, mentally, and spiritually. The Apostle Paul addresses this same condition at the end of his letter to the Ephesians, or the Philippians. His first instruction comes in the form of a command. Stop. Be not anxious about anything. This command, however, is not meant as a cure-all, but to interrupt the vicious cycle long enough for our brains to receive different input. Then Paul tells us what that input is. He says that it is prayer. Paul specifically mentions prayer, supplication, and thanksgiving. The prayer part that Paul is referring to can be as simple as help me. This followed by supplication. Supplication is a more focused prayer in which we ask God for what we want. Finally, there is thanksgiving. While at first glance, thanksgiving seems out of place here, when viewed a second time, we realize becomes the key that unlocks and dissolves our anxiety. By turning to God in thanksgiving, we have effectively removed ourselves from the fear and the anxieties of the vicious cycle and found peace in the Lord. A peace that spreads like ripples in a pond. Paul concludes, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Jesus Christ. Paul's wisdom to the Philippians can be trusted because it comes from his own experience and journey with Christ. Paul's letter to the Ephesians was penned while he was in a Roman prison where he was incarcerated for his faith. So we gather together here this afternoon to celebrate Heidi's life. We gather together to support one another, to swap memories and stories. We learn and bring examples of Heidi's goodness into the world by passing on that same goodness to those we meet. In this way, Heidi's memory is renewed in our hearts and our minds and our spirits continually. Amen.
Hello, everyone. Heidi was born in Germany in 1945, and she immigrated to the United States with her family in 1958. Inside joke. And then moved to New York City in 1963. She attended and graduated from the Latin American Institute, where she studied languages, and later was working for Appleton Century Crofts. She had always told me that, she had always thought about being a translator and maybe working for the United Nations. That didn't exactly happen though, because in 1966, she met Nick Nikolaidis on a blind date. And it wasn't long before he moved into her apartment on the Upper West Side, and they were married in 1968. One weekend while they were driving through this very area in 1969, after dropping their brother off at college, they passed through Bethel and fell in love with the rural landscape. Instead of their planned vacation to Aruba, they used their savings to buy a little cabin in Bethel, 2 miles up the road from here. And 50 years later, that was still their primary residence. In 1972, I came along. A few years later, they opened and operated the Buckboard Restaurant in Randolph. And after that, the Black Forest Cafe in Bethel. While their careers were primarily in food service and catering, my mom had other pursuits. These included insurance sales, dabbling with local politics, being frequently a regular substitute teacher in Bethel, Randolph, Royalton. Like my father, she was also active in the Bethel Business Association, the Bethel Historical Society, influential in the Town Hall Restoration Project. And she was the driving force that got the hanging baskets to line the poles in Bethel on Main Street for many years. One of those hangs outside as a little bit of a memento. Incidentally, I know many of you were here, not here, sorry, but you were there for my father's service about 6 months ago, and you may have noticed some similarities between this speech and that one. If the reason for that isn't obvious, it's because they were not inseparable, but they were always a couple, Nick and Heidi. Each of them had their own hobbies and activities, but within Bethel, it was normal for someone to refer to Nick and Heidi rather than Nick or Heidi. Back to my mom. She got her pilot's license in 1980 and joined a flight club in Montpelier. Her love of flying led her to join the Civil Air Patrol, where she achieved the rank of captain and was wing commander in Vermont. 1980 was also the year when she became a naturalized American citizen. My mom loved animals. We were never without pets. There was always at least one dog or cat in the family, sometimes as many as 4 of each. We referred to it as the zoo crew. We also kept goats, chickens, sometimes rabbits, briefly. There are too many favorites to list, but there was a certain basset hound that comes to mind. We called him Shorty. He was the closest thing that I ever had to a brother. Heidi loved to dabble with technology. Like many people in the 80s, we had a personal computer with which we did nearly nothing useful. We also loved playing video games together on my Atari. Her favorite was Stampede, where you'd play a little, very pixelated cowboy going after ropes. It had one command, like all you could do is just push the button and throw the little lasso. And yet somehow my mom and I would play this game for hours together. She and Nick bought me my first computer, Tandy 1000 SX with 384 kilobytes of memory, 2 floppy drives. They figured that would be enough for me, right? And we all know where that led me in my career. Eventually we got internet access, and while I was the first member of the family who was online, anyone remember AOL? Right? Yeah. I hope no one here is still using AOL. My mom was extremely online, even by today's standards. Whether it was on the computer or the iPad, she would spend hours a day surfing the web, posting on socials, forwarding emails back and forth to friends, buying and selling things on eBay, usually making a profit day trading on the stock market. She sold things like these orchids. Heidi loved to travel. Over time, she piloted the planes less and left that to the professionals, but she still loved to travel, often with her sister. It's great to have connections in high places, right, Meg? She frequently traveled to Asia, Thailand, China, India, and she even trekked in Nepal. Her love of travel definitely rubbed off on me, even though I haven't trotted the globe quite as much as she had. Yet. She loved spicy food, a gene that she passed on to me. We used to love to cook things as hot as we could and see who could eat something hotter. This was back in the days when the habanero pepper was considered the hottest pepper ever. We'd always have bottles of hot sauce available, or a pepper plant growing in the window or out in the garden. She taught me how to cook, mostly by observation, but she also made sure I knew how to navigate the kitchen. My mom was stubborn. She was German, she was an Aries, and she was stubborn for a German Aries. You could not tell her she could or could not do something. We were traveling together once, I don't even remember, I think it might have been Germany. And we were in the airport and she wanted to check something out. I was like, Mom, they just said last call, we need to go. And she's like, no, they'll wait. I'm like, no, they won't wait. Okay, you do what you're doing. I'm going. I got on the plane. Ladies and gentlemen, it was quite the way. And then a few minutes later, my mom walks in and they close the door behind it. They waited. Even when her health had started to take a downturn, she insisted on a return trip and another trek in Nepal. Everything changed 9 years ago with her first stroke, which left her paralyzed and unable to speak. Despite this, she was able to communicate basic needs, mostly with my father, who stayed with her the entire time. Those who knew my mom could still see her personality shining through, despite the lack of words. And even though she couldn't cook or travel anymore, she was always watching a food or travel channel on TV. Every time, even when I would visit her. A few weeks before her last stroke, I was able to visit her, and I brought my neighbor's dog. She was clearly delighted to see him. Me too, but mostly him. She had another stroke last month, and that left her even less communicative. That said, she still recognized me when I visited her until her last few days. As with my father, the last words she heard from me were, "I love you, and I'll see you soon." I'm not sure where she is now, but I do take comfort knowing that she's with my father again.
I'd like to share a story from when I was a pastor of the Bethel Church, which is how I met Heidi for the first time. And when I conclude, I would invite members of the congregation to stand up and tell their own stories and share their own memories, because this is how she lives on. This is how we move on. Used to go up to the Nikolaidises a lot for dinner. Heidi would invite me. And I always felt very soon, like after the second time I went up, I felt like one of her kids. You know, I was welcomed just like a member of the family. I was treated like a member of the family. And you get to know that as a pastor, because the people that are not your family bring you to the living room. People that are your family sit you down at the kitchen table. And I sat at the kitchen table. On one occasion, I came in and I was looking around, and we were chit-chatting before dinner took place. And I saw this beautiful little teacup. Had a very ornate saucer. It was multicolored, china with a top on it. It was absolutely gorgeous. And I said, "Heidi, that's a beautiful teacup." She looked at me, she says, "Take it." And I said, "No, that's yours. I can't take that." Well, as Peter so eloquently put it, German and Aries. And I left with that cup, because I could see that it was a gift of love. And I'll have you know that on the hutch in my house, there are 3 cubbies, along with the open space and 3 other cubbies. And that teacup sits till this day, where I take a look at it every day. Thank you for listening. And I would invite anybody else to please stand up and share a story or two.
I will. I'm not good at this. I'm really nervous. Sorry, everybody. I spent a lot of time with Heidi before she was sick, her and Nick, and she and I would get in a little bit of trouble sometimes. We would be going to auctions or to, whatever, dog shows, whatever have you, to cater, and Nick would be off on another job with other people, and we were 9 times out of 10 usually late. We were off getting ice cream, or, "Oh, look at that, let's go look at this." So we'd go look at it, and Nick of course wouldn't know, because he when I was taking care of her, she asked me to pluck her eyebrows. And I said, I don't do this. I'm not one of those girls, but okay, I'll pluck your eyebrows. So she's out on the porch laying there in the sun in her chair, and I'm plucking away. And I said, okay, I think that's enough now. I'm done. She said, no, keep going, keep going. Sorry, Peter. I'm like, well, she didn't say, excuse me, she couldn't say, but I could understand what she wanted. And so she wanted me to keep plucking them. And so by the time I was done, I kept saying to her, hey, you're not going to have any eyebrows left. And she's, okay. By the time I was done, I plucked all of her eyebrows off. And I'm like, Heidi, what? And she looks in the mirror and she just bursts out laughing. And I'm like, oh my word, But she, she was just, she just wanted, I don't know, and it was funny. It was, one of those moments. But and of course, this she gave me many years ago from one of her trips. Like you were saying, and I always felt like part of the family. I have always. But yeah, I guess that's, I have a lot of memories, taking her for rides, after she had her stroke, going out for ice cream when I take her for those rides, her showing me, pointing to me along the back roads to where, like there was a waterfall I can think of, the old railroad tracks, many things that she pointed out to me. And I have to guess, we couldn't leave until I guessed and I figured out what she was pointing to or what she was talking about. But many fond memories.
Anyway, I have a lot of stories about Heidi being my older sister, but started basically when we immigrated from Germany. On that flight, I just have to laugh because the stewardess let me bring water to the passengers. And I brought so much water to Heidi that she vomited. But I got my dream that flight, I'm going to be a stewardess. And much to the chagrin of my parents, who were always trying to groom me to be a nurse. And nothing against nurses, but that just wasn't my thing. So when Heidi went off to college, I was only 11 and she was 18. And I thought, I'm losing my only advocate here. And she says, don't argue with them, just agree with them. When you graduate from high school, you can do what you want. This is like an epiphany to me. So anyway, guess who won? I'm still flying. I started my airline career. I did a whole bunch of things in my life, but my airline career started Pan Am, eventually Northwest, and then Northwest merged with Delta. And I'm still flying to this day, not as much as before. But I'm mentioning that because I made Heidi my travel buddy at one point when she wanted to travel. So she would take care of my dog. That was my little dog, Tango. At that point, Tango was smaller than Archie, the cat. But Heidi would take care of my dog when I was gone, and I would come back and she would say, do you want your dog back? And I knew that meant she wanted to go somewhere. So we trekked through Nepal, we walked on the Great Wall of China. She wanted to go to see the Taj Mahal, and she really fell in love with Thailand, so we went there several times. And one particular time I remember, on the trek through Nepal, all the girls, a lot of my friends came along there. Like I used to do work with airline ambassadors, so she got to know all the other people that were on this group with trekking through Nepal, bringing medical and school supplies to children in need in the different villages. And everyone wanted to trek and walk with Heidi because she could point out plants and flowers. She was really the horticulturist. So now there's one time we're in Thailand, and we always didn't want to do the same thing, which was okay. So we would just say, hey, you go do your thing, I'll do mine, we'll meet back for dinner. So this one day she wanted to go to this floral show and all, and I went to a tailor to go pick up a dress I had made. Get back to the hotel around the same time, and we're in the lobby, I hear a voice, and a man say, Madame, your packages have arrived. I turn over there and there's the bellman with 2 of the luggage carts filled with boxes. And I said, please tell me he is not speaking to you. And she said, yeah, those are my plants. Well, there were 25 boxes on each of the luggage carts, and each of those boxes had over 100 tubes of orchids. That's why I had to bring the orchids here today as like a little nod to her. And I told her there because now just think, we were on standby because she was on a buddy pass with me, and so we only get on the airplane if there's space. So I was like, oh my gosh, but anyway, everything worked out fine, like, you know, our trips did, and we really, you know, I just had a lot of fond memories of like our travels together. But, you know, that one was one of the most memorable because like it just, with all those boxes, trading, going 3 different legs that we had to fly with these boxes, transferring them to going cargo. But anyway, I think she's up there somewhere and knows, you know, that we're here meeting to just, you know, have a memorial and honor her memory. Anyway, the last words she heard from me was I told her I loved her too. That was like 2 days before she passed.
I'll talk a little bit. I'm Mr. Paul Cook from Springfield, Vermont. I've known Heidi and Nick for 35 years from the Stamp Club and the catering. I stopped in, I saw Heidi on my way home from my cousin's, the eye doctor on Montpelier. She was a little bit out, then I was 9/11 last month, and I was there for about 15 minutes, brushed her hand, and didn't really get any reaction. The time before, as soon as I came into the room, her face would light up. This time here, she was just very sedate, and just went there, and I got some pictures for you, Peter, there. Did you get them? Okay. And a couple of days later, she had passed, and it was just, I'd like to thank everybody who took care of her for 9 years now. 9 years, Peter? 9 years, and it's been a hard trek for everybody. So I'd like to thank any nurses who are here, any doctors who took care of her, and Peter and your family. Thank you very much.
So I'm going to go in a slightly different direction, I think. So I met Peter when I was 5. So I spent a great deal of time in that house with Heidi and Nick. And you all have completely captured the warmth and the welcome. When Lisa and I first started dating in the early 90s, I made a fair amount of trips up and down these roads. And better than 70% of the time, at some point on the drive up, somewhere between, you know, the paved portion of Camp Brook and this set of 4 corners, I would come around a corner to find this low rider creature, Shorty, ambling down the road, and inevitably would pull over. Come on, Shorty, get in the truck. And he would walk to the truck and look at it, look at me like, really? So I'd pick him up, put him on the seat, and no matter where I was actually going, our next stop became Nick and Heidi's to return the dog. And every single time I pulled up with the dog, Heidi would come out and look at Shorty and say, "Where did you go today?" Like she was earnestly wanting to hear the story of his adventure. And I just, when I think about that, I just think about, you know, the way she loved to travel and the way she loved to see the world. And she was not going to deny that dog the opportunity to go see the world he wanted to see. Yeah.
Anybody else?
Hi, I'm a neighbor of Nick and Heidi, and how true they were a team, that's for sure. I didn't know Heidi well, but I wanted to say that as their interest in the Bethel Historical Society and their passion for documenting and learning about the committees is just remarkable. I have like every newsletter the Historical Society ever published, and I know she was instrumental in writing and editing that newspaper, and I'm just really grateful for their passion and the stamp fairs and town, all those events that they helped put together is just a remarkable legacy. Thank you.
I'm one of the LNAs at Cedar Hill that took care of Heidi when she was there. Heidi was just a special, because you'd always have to play charades with her when you went in there to figure out what she needed. I spent a good 10 to 20 minutes going in there, and all she would be is go like this, go like this, go like this. Come to find out, she wanted the remote that was right here, and it wasn't even where she was pointing to. Just her smile, but she was definitely stubborn, let me tell you. To get that lady dressed, you had to pull every single piece of clothing out of her closet out. Nope, nope, nope. Come to find out, she wanted the same shirt that I first pulled out in the first place. That's the one she wanted. And Nick's, I'll say something about Nick too, because the meals, they used to always come in and cook for us. All the wonderful meals, and yeah, we really miss Heidi. We used to tell stories about her all the time. We used to go in and sing to her. One of the other girls had a little baby, and she loved babies. Oh, just the smile. When Charlie came in to see, we even have pictures of when Charlie came to see Heidi. It was during the pandemic, so everybody had, masks, but she was a special lady. We'll miss her. Well, we do miss her. That room is still empty as far as I know. Thank you.
Anybody else? Well, thank you for everybody who shared their stories. It's good to hear those because not everybody has the same experience, but now we all can take those stories away with us. And that really is the point of sharing those stories. Let us bow our heads for the closing prayer. God is near to all who call from their hearts. The desires of those who fear God are fulfilled. Their cries are heard. They are saved. Amen.